getting in touch with us about the universal credit story that we're covering this morning. Paul on Twitter said, how is it a U-turn when the policy hasn't changed? They've just taken some people out of the net. The only way to fix universal credit is to scrap it completely. Another text here, an anonymous text, says, I agree with the 2-child cap on benefits. It's time that those on benefits realise that it isn't a bottomless pot of money. The working public can't go to their employees and get a wage increase each time a child is born into their family. They have to learn to stretch their income to cover the extra costs. This is a decision that should be considered if you choose to have more children. And Agnes on Facebook says it's time to scrap it, that's universal credit, and start again. People are being driven to despair trying to navigate the Department of Work and Pensions website. Not being able to speak to someone who actually knows what they're doing is an absolute joke. Well, if you're affected by those changes, if you have more than 2 children who were born before April 2017, and it means that you are going to get more money for those other children, get in touch with us this morning. Be interested to hear your thoughts on that and what difference it will actually make. Well, in the next few minutes, the Work and Pensions Secretary Amber Rudd is going to announce major changes to universal credit. You'll remember it's where 6 benefits for working age people are merged into a single payment. Well, there's been this U-turn on a decision to make the 2-child benefit cap retrospective. So all children born before April 2017, when the welfare cap was announced, are going to be supported by universal credit instead of only the first 2 children in a family. Now, the government says this is going to help around 15,000 families a year. And instead of all claimants on the old system being moved on to universal credit, there will be a 12-month pilot scheme where just 10,000 people will move. Only after this will MPs be asked to vote on moving all 3 million people who claim the relevant benefits will move across to universal credit. But the government's still facing pressure to reduce the 5 weeks that new claimants have to wait before they receive any money at all, something which thousands of families say has plunged them into poverty. Well, we're going to bring that news conference by Amber Rudd to you live. We're expecting it, in the next few minutes. But first of all, let's have a conversation with people affected by this. And also Heidi Allen, who is a Conservative MP and a member of the Work and Pensions Committee. She's been very outspoken, a critic of the way that universal credit has been working. Also with us is Maria Amos, who has been on universal credit since 2016. And she is going to speak to us in the next few minutes, but we're going to cross over now to Amber Rudd, who is speaking live at a job centre in London. Let's have a listen.
With the principles of helping people into work, making work pay, and providing support in times of need. And I want universal credit to retain that support as we deliver it in practice. This means delivering it in a way that meets the needs of claimants who come from every conceivable background and each with the potential to achieve their ambitions. In welfare, there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and universal credit offers the opportunity to move away from that. It must treat individuals as individuals, and I will set out the first steps I will take to achieve that today. Our welfare system is based upon 3 fundamental principles. First, work. Those who can, should, and those who cannot should be protected from poverty. Second, work should always pay. And third, the system should be fair for the taxpayers who pay for it, and fair to those who receive it, and fair to future generations who do not deserve to become trapped in it. As a nation, I believe we all want a decent safety net. If you're facing a difficult moment in life, the state should be there to help you. Whether that's becoming unemployed, falling ill, or facing bereavement, nobody should find themselves alone in desperate circumstances. But it is vital that people are supported by this safety net, not trapped beneath it. It is there to help people get through difficult times. It's not meant to be a mode of long-term subsistence for those who can work. For the vast majority of people, it is ultimately work, not benefits, which provides the route to a better life. And the welfare system should clear a path for that route, not block it. Work gives purpose, dignity, security, the opportunity to provide for your family, progress in earnings, and build a fulfilling life. In this respect, the old system was broken. It's why we had to reform it. Now, despite what some people suggest, the legacy system, 6 different benefits from 3 government departments, was not a utopia that we should return to. Indeed, 700,000 claimants on that system are currently failing to claim their full entitlement because they find it so confusing. These people, some of the most vulnerable in society, are failing to receive on average £285 a month. Under the old regime, claimants who moved off benefits into full-time work lost welfare payments almost immediately, which resulted in effective tax rates of up to 90% on their income. As an MP, I frequently met people who wanted to earn more but were too scared to take on extra hours, knowing they'd have so little to gain.
Now, we're going to keep an ear across the Work and Pensions Secretary, Amber Rudd, who is speaking at a job centre in London, making that announcement about universal credit. Any new announcements that she makes, we will bring to you here. But in the meantime, I want to introduce you to our guests who are with us. I was saying just before we cross to speak to Amber Rudd, Maria Amos is with us. She has been on universal credit since 2016 and has recently been having panic attacks because she's been told she needs to manage that online. She doesn't have access to a computer. And is very concerned about that. We'll speak to her in a moment. Also with us is Emily Dorman O'Gowan. She is a single mum who went on to universal credit after losing her job following a car crash in June 2017. Emily, I want to begin by speaking with you, if I may. Tell me what your experience has been like going on to universal credit.
Hi, Chloe. It's been absolutely terrifying. I'd like to pick up on something that Amber Rudd just mentioned, which was the protection from poverty for those who cannot work. That is exactly what is happening to those of us in a similar situation to myself. We are being thrown into poverty. From the moment that I went onto universal credit, I went into arrears on my rent, which is with a social housing group. It's affordable housing. I had a notice for repossession over my head for about 8 months of last year as a result. I had huge council tax arrears due to valuation office delaying my valuation by 2 years, and I was taken to court by the county council for that because I was unable to pay it on universal credit. The idea that the universal credit is stopping people from falling under the system is an absolute joke. Again, that was something that Amber Rudd just highlighted. She said we don't want people trapped. I'm trapped. There's just no question about it. And again, what she just said about the idea of people being effectively taxed up to 90% of their salary when coming off benefits, it's still happening with universal credit. If you don't know what your earnings are going to be from month to month, you don't know what your universal credit is going to be from month to month. And anything over the £190-something threshold that you're allowed to earn, you are then deducted 63% of your universal credit against whatever you're earning. So that vicious cycle is continuing.
Emily, as you're speaking, I can see that Maria is nodding away in Merseyside. Maria, have you had similar experiences?
Yes, I have. Hello, Chloe. Yes, I have. When I first went on to universal credit, I've worked all my life since I was 16. And my last job was in Chester Zoo. And when I finished that, it was only for 10 months. When I finished that and had to go and sign back on, I was put on universal credit. I live on my own. I had nothing for 5 weeks. I was on such poor money anyway. I had no savings. And then I was told to have nothing for 5 weeks. At the end of 5 weeks, all I had was water in my tap. People don't believe that, but that's all I had. So I decided to end my life. I didn't. A friend saved me. And then after 5 weeks, and the first thing they'd done when they paid me was take my council tax out of it and deducted council tax. I couldn't understand it. I really couldn't.
Maria, I want to put that point that you raised to Heidi Allen MP, who is with us, member of the Work and Pensions Select Committee. And I know that Heidi Allen, you have been very outspoken of the way universal credit has penalised people. But when you see this announcement from Amber Rudd today, she's talking about 15,000 families benefiting from getting payments if they have more than 2 children born before April 2017. But actually what Maria and Emily are talking about is it's still this 5-week wait before people are paid that is plunging people into poverty. If that was changed, that would help everybody, 3 million people on universal credit.
Totally, you're completely preaching to the converted, and I feel like I'm beginning to sound a bit like a stuck record because I keep saying that too. I think there's another thing as well, actually, too. There are lots of tweaks that need making with the universal credit, but you're right, the 5-week wait is one of the big ones, and I think the other one is the benefit freeze, because you'll know that benefits have been frozen for 4 years. There's 1 more year to run, but in that, when we set that policy, inflation was very low. But since then, inflation's gone up, wage rises have gone up, pension. I mean, literally everybody in the UK, apart from people on working age benefits, have seen their incomes rise. So I think it's 2 things. But the 5-week wait, you're absolutely right. And I mentioned this, in fact, in the House of Commons at the beginning of the week on Monday. I've been suggesting to successive Secretaries of State, and I have spoken to Amber very recently about it as well, maybe not for everybody, because if it was me that lost my job and I just needed a couple of months to get myself sorted, I'd be fine because I have, some savings. But I think for people who literally have no financial resilience at all, the advance payments which government has made available, literally on day one, if you're struggling, you can have an advance payment. But of course, that's a loan, which you then have to pay back over time. And all the, you can pay it back over a year, and that in theory sounds fine, but when it's being deducted from a pretty small amount anyway, it can be crippling for people.
Absolutely, Heidi. As you're saying that, I can see that Maria's doing eyes heavenwards, and I can also see that Emily is shaking her head. Because, Emily, that's the problem, isn't it? That if you get that advance payment, it's effectively a loan which you still have to pay back.
Yeah.
This needs to be really strongly clarified, Chloe. The loan system, when you ring and ask for a loan, the person you speak to on the phone tells you what they think the maximum is that you are able to borrow. And they then set the timetable for the repayments. So, for example, I think borrowed about £130 from them initially, and I had to pay back £30 a month. So, with all due respect to what Heidi's just said, the idea of being able to pay over the long term is a nonsense, okay? That is not the way it works.
Kind of finish what I wanted to say.
And you're only allowed to borrow what they think you can repay. So, that's it's a real grey area.
So if I could, what I was going to come on to say, and I was sort of starting to allude to that, the amount that's taken away is from not a very generous starting pot, so it can be absolutely crippling for people. So what I've asked Amber to look at is that first advance payment that you get. I think that should be your first payment, not your loan, your first payment that isn't then clawed back. It isn't a loan, and then if they've made a best guess as to what they think your monthly payment will be. If it's wrong at the end of the first month, they can tweak it up or down, and then you're in the cycle then of the universal credit each month. And then at the end, let's say in 12, 18 months, you're back on your feet again and you can come off UC. Take it back then, right at the very end, like your last payment. I suppose not quite the same, but a bit of an analogy is you've got a deposit and your rent, you don't get your deposit back rather than paying your last month's rent, that sort of thing. And I think if we were to take that loan repayment problem away, as you've just very eloquently described, I think that would transform UC for a lot of people.
Because, Emily, this was a problem for you, wasn't it? It led to you having to go to and use food banks, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I think I used the food bank in my town for about 8 weeks, which is so humbling and humiliating at the same time. I mean, for strangers to turn up on your doorstep and deliver you food is an act of kindness that I can't adequately describe it. But by the same token, you're then living on food which is full of things that are bad for you, and you're told that you shouldn't be eating, like sodium nitrite in packed meats and things
Emily,
like that.
forgive me for jumping in, because I want to head back over to listen to Amber Rudd, the Work and Pension Secretary, because she is just talking at the moment about private landlords and renting. Let's have a listen.
So they can request, where necessary, for their tenants' rent to be paid directly to them. And I'll consider what else we can do, because I'm determined to help people keep in their homes. I'm also looking at what more can be done to support those who find monthly payments too difficult to manage. We need to go back to first principles, reviewing how we identify claimants who might struggle to manage on monthly payments, and ensuring work coaches are moving them on to more frequent payments where necessary. I've asked Job Centre Plus to test how we can improve the provision of more frequent payments for new claimants. Those pilots will start shortly, and once we've evidence of what works, we will roll it out further. We must ensure that provision of frequent payments doesn't slow the system for users who don't require them, but I believe we can offer this facility more widely so those in genuine need can take it up more readily. Indeed, some of the most exciting results we've seen from Universal Credit have resulted from personalised and targeted support reaching the right people. This is particularly true for groups who have historically been left out of the labour market. Women can never be truly free until they have economic independence.
So that is the Work and Pension Secretary, Amber Rudd, speaking live at a job centre in London. We're just trying to clarify there, if she is saying that rent could be requested to be paid directly to private landlords, because this has been a huge issue. And Maria, I can see you nodding away, because under the previous benefits, rent would go directly to the landlord rather than to the claimant, whereas now the claimant receives all of the money. Would you find it easier if your rent was taken out first before the money came to you?
Well, where I live now, my rent automatically goes to my housing association.
Because you're in social housing, and they do that currently for social housing, but not
I'm in
private
over 55s.
Right, OK.
But I also made sure that my rent went to them. If you give somebody a big amount of money, and people have issues, and you don't pay your rent, well, I don't ever want to be in that. So my rent automatically now, because I asked for it, to go straight there, you know?
Do you think that would
my rent is paid now, so there's a worry off my head then, you know?
Yeah, that makes it easier for you. Emily, do you think it would be beneficial if that rent was automatically taken out before it got to a claimant?
This happened to me because of the notice of repossession that was hanging over me. One of the first payments that I got from Universal Credit left me with less than £1,000 for a month, and I rang my social housing landlord and said to them, please can I pay you 400 instead of 520 this month, because that £120 would mean the world to me. And on the back of that, they just went straight to Universal Credit and said, get the payments direct to us. So I personally feel there's a massive question mark over the direct deductions process, because who needs the money more? The landlords or the council tax, or the individual who needs to be able to eat and wash and be warm and feel secure?
Well, Emily, I can clarify that Amber Rudd, the Work and Pension Secretary, has just said that private landlords will be able to request that rent goes directly to them, which has been something that I know many people have been asking for. Heidi Allen MP, thank you for joining us. Thank you also to Maria Amos and also to Emily Dorman O'Gowan. If you're affected by that, if you are on Universal Credit and you're in private accommodation, would that help you if that money was taken out directly before it got to you? Get in touch with us. You can use the hashtag #VictoriaLive.